a 100% tariff on pharma imports into the United States. Wow, that was the bombshell announcement that sent some serious shockwaves through the market, hitting Indian pharmaceutical stocks pretty hard. So, if you're an investor in this space, you're asking, how bad is this really? Who's most at risk? And what on earth happens next?
So what's the real story here? Is it time for all-out market panic? Or was that initial sell-off just a massive overreaction? Let's dig in. The answer you'll see is all in the details. And honestly, understanding them could completely change how you look at this whole thing. All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the tariff shock itself. Then, we're going to get into the whole branded versus generics thing. This part's super important. After that, we'll rank the companies by risk, check out their escape hatch, and finally, wrap up with what you really need to watch for in the future.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. The announcement. What exactly was said, and why did the market kind of freak out so fast? So here it is, the heart of the matter. Starting October 1st, 2025, boom, 100% tariff gets slapped on imported branded and patented pharmaceutical drugs. Now you got to remember those two words, branded and patented. For Indian pharma, that distinction, well, it changes everything.
And that brings us to what is maybe the single most important point of this whole explainer. You have to understand the difference between these types of drugs, because if you don't, none of the rest of this is going to make sense.
Think of it like this. You've got your branded drugs, the original, expensive, patent-protected stuff. That's what the tariff hits. Then you have generic drugs. These are the low-cost copies, the ones made after the patent runs out. And this is India's sweet spot. I mean, India is the world's pharmacy for generics, supplying 40% of what the US uses. And the crucial fact, for now, they are totally exempt.
So, what's the bottom line? Once you cut through all the noise and the panic, what's the actual damage? Well, analysts are saying it's only about 3%. Just 3% of India's drug exports to the US actually fall under this new tariff. That one number completely changes the game, right? This isn't a broadside attack, it's more like a surgical strike. But that doesn't mean every company is in the clear, not even close. The risk is not uniform at all. And the real danger isn't even this specific tariff, it's about what might come next. To figure that out, you've got to look at one key thing. How much of a company's money comes from the US market?
And you can see it plain as day right here. It's a total spectrum. On the high-risk end, you've got companies like Pharma and Dr. Reddy's. I mean, we're talking about half their revenue or even more tied directly to the US. But then look at the other end, Divi's and Alchem Labs. They're much more spread out. And that heavy dependence, that's what makes a company a sitting duck for any future tariff shocks coming out of the US.
Let's just zoom in on a high-risk company like Dr. Reddy's for a second. Look at that. Almost half of their entire business depends on the US market. That's huge. And it's why they become this sort of canary in the coal mine for investors. If there's any hint of trouble with US policy, they're going to feel it, even if this specific tariff isn't the main problem for them right now.
And things get even more interesting when you dig into what these companies actually sell. Take Sun Pharma. They're a bit more exposed to this particular tariff because about half their US revenue comes from specialty brands which, you guessed it, are patented. Dr. Reddy's has a different problem. Their US dependence is high, but they make very little of their stuff actually in the US. Then you have Cipla, which is seen as a relative safe haven for one simple reason. They already make a decent chunk of their US products on American soil.
So this all sounds pretty risky, right? Well, here's the twist. The tariff announcement wasn't just a threat. It actually came with a clear way out. It's like they handed these companies an escape hatch, and the smart ones are already using it.
And here it is. The policy literally says the tariff doesn't apply if a company is building a manufacturing plant in America. And get this, building is defined as simply breaking ground or being under construction. That's it. It's a massive blinking neon sign pointing towards onshoring production.
So the strategic playbook for these companies is pretty straightforward. Step 1, build or buy a plant in the US. That's the most direct way to get that exemption. Step 2, for a faster fix, is to shift some production to existing partners who are already in the US. In Step 3, for some in-demand products, they might just be able to pass that extra cost right along to consumers. Now here's some good news, especially if you're an investor. This isn't some crazy new scramble. Many of the big players have been hedging against this kind of risk for years. Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo, and Lupin, they already have manufacturing in the US. Others, like Zydus, are actively buying up facilities. So what we're seeing isn't a reaction born from panic. It's really just an acceleration of a strategy that was already in motion. But of course, this is way bigger than just a few corporate balance sheets. You have to think about the real-world impact. As Gaurav Soni, the founder of Botanica Healthcare, put it, these kinds of protectionist walls can have serious consequences. They can drive up healthcare costs and really fractious supply chains that are already stretched pretty thin.
So, if the immediate impact is pretty limited, what are the real, lingering risks that investors need to keep on their radar? Okay, let's look ahead.
If you're looking at the timeline, a couple of things really stand out. In March 2026, we're going to see the results of a national security review that could broaden this whole conversation. And that points to the single biggest future risk. What if these tariffs expand to include complex generics and biosimilars? That would be a direct hit to the high-value end of India's core export market.
But here's the thing. Expanding tariffs to generics is a real double-edged sword for the U.S. I mean, think about it. India supplies 40% of their generic drugs. A move like that would almost certainly trigger drug shortages and send healthcare costs through the roof for American consumers. And that, right there, gives the Indian pharma sector some significant leverage.
So, the key takeaway for today? This tariff is best understood as a warning shot, not a direct hit. It's a clear signal from the U.S. to encourage onshoring, but its immediate impact on the bulk of Indian pharma exports is minimal. The real danger, as always, lies in what could come next.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question for the industry's future. Are tariffs just going to become the new cost of doing business? Or are we witnessing the very beginning of a fundamental realignment of the entire global pharmaceutical supply chain? That's the multi-billion-dollar question investors are going to be tracking for years to come.